The transport vessel shuddered as it broke through the atmospheric barrier, and Commander Vash'kara felt her stomach lurch in that uniquely unpleasant way that 15 years of space travel had never quite prepared her for. She gripped the armrest of her seat, her three-fingered hands leaving slight impressions in the synthetic material, and tried not to think about how this entire mission was probably going to get her demoted. Or killed. Possibly both, in that order. "Approaching the diplomatic platform now," announced Lieutenant Krell from the pilot's seat, his voice carrying that special blend of boredom and terror that only military pilots could master. "Should I remind everyone that we're about to meet the species that punched a hole through the Draknor fleet using what they call improvised munitions?" "That won't be necessary, Lieutenant," Vash'kara replied, though she appreciated the sentiment. The Draknor had been the galaxy's premier military power for 3 centuries. Had been. Past tense. Until 6 months ago, when humanity decided to introduce themselves to the galactic community by turning 17 Draknor warships into what the humans cheerfully described as abstract art installations. The diplomatic platform loomed ahead, a massive structure that the Galactic Council had constructed specifically for this meeting. Neutral ground, lots of witnesses, hopefully enough to prevent the humans from doing anything too creative with the local physics. Vash'kara smoothed down her ceremonial uniform, a ridiculous thing covered in medals she'd never actually earned, because the Toral Empire believed that looking impressive was half the battle. The other half, apparently, was not getting your entire fleet reduced to component atoms by a species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 8 years ago. 8 years! The Toral had taken 6,000 years to develop FTL capabilities. The humans had apparently gotten bored one afternoon and decided to skip a few steps in the conventional physics playbook. When the Galactic Council had sent a diplomatic envoy to make first contact, the humans had responded with what their data files called enthusiastic curiosity, and what everyone else recognized as barely controlled chaos held together by caffeine and optimism. The docking procedure completed with a soft thunk that Vash'kara felt through the hull. She stood, adjusted her uniform one more time, and tried to remember the 17 different ways she was supposed to greet a human without accidentally declaring war, proposing marriage, or challenging them to ritual combat. The humans had assured the Council that they understood diplomatic protocols. The Council remained skeptical. "Commander," said Ensign Thora, her communications officer, "the humans are requesting permission to board our vessel. They say, and I quote, 'It would be way cooler to meet on your ship because it has that whole sleek alien vibe going on.'" Vash'kara blinked, all 3 of her eyes in sequence, a Toral expression of profound confusion. Did they actually use the phrase, sleek alien vibe? "Yes, Commander. Also, they want to know if we have any snacks." This was going to be a very long day. Vash'kara approved the boarding request because refusing seemed like it might constitute an insult, and the last thing anyone needed was an insulted human. The Draknor had learned that lesson the hard way. According to the after-action reports, the whole mess had started because a Draknor admiral had called humans primitive apes with delusions of relevance. The humans had taken this personally, very personally. The kind of personally that resulted in the Draknor High Command issuing a formal apology while standing in what remained of their flagship. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and Vash'kara positioned herself in the reception bay along with her senior staff. They stood at attention, trying to project an image of military professionalism and definitely not an image of species who were collectively terrified of what was about to walk through that door. The door opened, and a human stepped through. She was tall by human standards. Vash'kara had done her research, with dark skin and hair that had been pulled back into what the database called a ponytail. She wore a military uniform that was somehow both informal and intimidating, and she moved with the kind of casual confidence that suggested she could probably kill everyone in the room and still have time to grab those snacks she'd asked about. "Commander Vash'kara," the human said, extending her hand in the traditional human greeting. "Lieutenant Maya Torres, Earth Defense Coalition. Thanks for having us aboard. Your ship really does have a great aesthetic. Very angular. I appreciate the commitment to the look." Vash'kara carefully took the offered hand, remembering to grip firmly, but not too firmly, because human bones were apparently both incredibly fragile and somehow capable of punching through reinforced hull plating. Physics worked differently when humans were involved. "Lieutenant Torres," Vash'kara replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Welcome aboard the Crimson Talon. We are honored by your presence." Maya smiled, and Vash'kara tried not to think about the fact that humans showing their teeth was supposed to be a friendly gesture. "The honor's ours, Commander. Though I gotta say, the name Crimson Talon is pretty metal. Did you guys have a committee come up with that? Or did someone just really like birds of prey?" There was a moment of silence as Vash'kara's translator worked through the phrase "pretty metal" and eventually gave up, offering only a small error message that blinked apologetically in the corner of her vision. "We take pride in our naming conventions," Vash'kara said carefully, deciding that was probably a safe response to whatever the human had just said. "Right on," Maya replied, which the translator suggested meant either correct and appropriate, or let us engage in activities toward the right direction. Human language was a nightmare of idioms and contextual meanings. So, should we get down to business? I know the Council wants us to establish some ground rules for human military operations. Make sure we're not going to accidentally cause any interstellar incidents, etc., etc. Vash'kara gestured toward the conference room, and they began walking. Maya's two companions followed behind, both human males who looked like they could individually bench press the entire Toral military command structure. One of them was carrying what appeared to be a container labeled "Emergency Provisions," which Vash'kara sincerely hoped contained something diplomatic and not, say, antimatter. The conference room was designed to impress, with a large observation window showing the stars beyond and a table made from genuine Corthan crystal that had cost more than most planets' gross domestic product. Maya looked around, nodded appreciatively, and then immediately sat in a chair in a way that suggested she'd never been taught proper diplomatic posture. "Nice setup," she said. "Very intimidating. I bet you close a lot of trade deals in here." "We try," Vash'kara said, taking her own seat with significantly more ceremony. "Lieutenant Torres, the Galactic Council has asked me to serve as a liaison between humanity and the existing military powers. There are concerns about how Earth conducts warfare." Maya leaned back in her chair, that same easy smile on her face. "Concerns? That's a diplomatic way of saying everyone's freaking out, because we're apparently really good at breaking things." "The Draknor incident," Vash'kara said carefully, "has raised questions about human tactical doctrine." "The Draknor incident," Maya repeated, her smile growing slightly sharper, "started when they showed up in the Sol system and demanded tribute. They fired first, Commander. We just fired last, and most of the shots in between, admittedly, but the principle stands." Vash'kara pulled up a holographic display showing the battle analysis. The Toral strategic computers had spent months trying to understand what had happened, running simulation after simulation. and each one came back with variations of the same conclusion. Humans didn't fight fair. According to our analysis, Vash'kara said, your forces engaged in tactics that no recognized military doctrine would consider acceptable. You used civilian vessels as decoys. You hacked into Draknor navigation systems and redirected their missiles back at their own ships. You somehow convinced a Draknor commander that his flagship was being attacked by a space monster, causing him to fire on his own escorts. The space monster thing was pretty inspired, one of Maya's companions said, speaking for the first time. He had a name tag that read Davis. That was my idea. Used some holographic projectors and pre-recorded whale songs. Draknor apparently have this deep-seated fear of large aquatic creatures. Who knew? Vash'kara felt a headache forming, which was impressive because Torres didn't typically get headaches. Lieutenant Torres, the Council needs assurance that humanity will conduct future military operations according to established galactic conventions. Maya's expression shifted, and suddenly the casual friendliness was gone, replaced by something colder and significantly more dangerous. Commander, let me make something very clear. The Draknor came to our home. They threatened our families. They told us we had two choices, submit or die. So we picked option 3, which was making them regret every decision that led them to our doorstep. The galaxy has rules, Vash'kara said, trying to keep her voice level. Rules about acceptable conduct in warfare. Rules that prevent conflicts from escalating into total annihilation. Rules, Maya said, and the word came out flat and hard, that apparently didn't protect us from being attacked in the first place. Rules that the Draknor ignored when they decided we weren't worth treating as equals. Rules that every species in this room right now benefits from, because you've all been playing the game long enough to know how to work the system. She leaned forward, and Vash'kara found herself leaning back despite her best efforts to maintain diplomatic composure. We're new to this game, Commander. We don't know all the rules yet, and honestly, we're not sure we like the ones we've learned so far. But we're fast learners. Frighteningly fast. So the Council can either work with us to integrate humanity into the galactic community as partners, or they can keep treating us like a problem that needs to be managed, and see how well that works out for everyone involved. The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable. Vash'kara's translator helpfully noted that human breathing patterns indicated elevated stress levels, which was about as useful as a tactical analysis that concluded the enemy appears to be shooting at us. The Council, Vash'kara said slowly, wants to avoid conflict. Good, Maya replied. So do we. But we want it on our terms, not because someone decided we need to be civilized according to standards set by people who weren't there when the Draknor showed up with guns. Vash'kara made a decision that would probably get her court-martialed, but seemed like the only reasonable path forward. She deactivated the recording systems in the room, a violation of about 17 different diplomatic protocols, and looked directly at Maya. Off the record, she said. I agree with you. Maya's eyebrows rose, a human expression the translator informed her indicated surprise. Really? Really? Vash'kara confirmed. The current galactic order is built on a foundation of species who had thousands of years to develop their military capabilities gradually. You didn't have that luxury. You went from flying chemical rockets to building FTL drives in less time than most civilizations spend arguing about committee appointments. The fact that you developed unconventional tactics isn't a flaw in your character. It's an entirely predictable response to your circumstances. Huh, said Davis. I like this one. Can we keep her? Maya shot him a look that suggested he should be quiet, which he cheerfully ignored. "The problem," Vash'kara continued, "is that the Council is terrified, not of what you've done, but of what you might do. Every simulation we run suggests that humanity's rate of technological advancement is increasing, not plateauing. Within a century, possibly less, humans will have capabilities that exceed the combined military might of every other species in known space." "And that scares people," Maya said. It wasn't a question. "That terrifies people," Vash'kara corrected. "Fear makes civilizations do stupid things. Preventive strikes, blockades, economic sanctions that escalate into shooting wars. The Council wants rules and protocols and agreements not to protect the galaxy from humanity, but to protect humanity from the galaxy's fear of you." Maya was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay, I can work with that. That's honest, at least. Better than the diplomatic runaround we've been getting from everyone else." "The question remains," Vash'kara said. "What do we do about it?" "We establish actual ground rules," Maya replied. "Not the kind that restrict us to fighting with one hand tied behind our backs, but the kind that make it clear we're not planning to conquer the galaxy just because we're good at blowing things up. Rules that work for everyone, including us." "The Council will want commitments," Vash'kara warned. "Binding agreements about military conduct, weapons restrictions, territorial boundaries." "And we'll want commitments in return," Maya countered. "Protection under galactic law. Trade agreements that don't screw us over because we're the new kids. A seat at the table when decisions get made, not an invitation to stand in the corner and look grateful." One of Vash'kara's junior officers, a young male named Trent, who had been quietly taking notes, raised his hand tentatively. Both Vash'kara and Maya looked at him, and he seemed to regret his decision immediately. "Yes, Ensign?" Vash'kara prompted. I was just wondering," Trent said nervously. "What happens if we can't reach an agreement? What if the Council decides humanity is too dangerous to integrate?" Maya's smile returned, but it wasn't friendly anymore. "Then we politely decline to participate in the galactic community, return to our space, and focus on our own development. And in 20 years, when we've built weapons that make the Draknor look like they were fighting with pointed sticks, we'll remember that the galaxy chose isolation over cooperation." "That sounds like a threat," Trent observed, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," Maya said. "A threat would be if I told you what we'd do with those weapons. This is just a statement of fact. Humans are really, really good at holding grudges, Ensign. It's one of our defining characteristics, right up there with pattern recognition and an unhealthy obsession with making things go fast." Vash'kara felt that headache intensifying. "Perhaps we should take a short break before continuing negotiations." "Great idea," Maya agreed, standing up and stretching in a way that made several joints pop audibly. "Is there a mess hall on this ship? I was serious about those snacks." As they left the conference room, Vash'kara found herself walking beside Maya, the two of them ahead of their respective entourages. "Can I ask you something?" Vash'kara said quietly. Purely personal curiosity. "Sure," Maya replied. "When the Draknor attacked, were you afraid?" Maya was silent for several steps. Then she said, "Terrified. Every single person in the defense fleet was scared out of their minds. We were outgunned, outmanned, and facing an enemy with technology centuries ahead of ours." "But you won," Vash'kara said. "We won," Maya confirmed. "Because being afraid and being ineffective are two different things. We were scared, so we got creative. We used every advantage we had. bent every rule that could be bent, and made up a few new ones when the old ones weren't working. Fear's a powerful motivator, Commander. It makes you think outside the box, sometimes way outside. Like, the box is on a different planet outside. They reached the mess hall, a modest space that served the crew during long voyages. Maya looked around, spotted a beverage dispenser, and made a delighted sound. "Oh, you have coffee," she said, moving toward it with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for discovering new planets. Or, wait, is this coffee? Your translation said coffee. Please tell me this is actually coffee and not some weird alien thing that just looks like coffee. It's synthocaf, Vash'kara said. A stimulant beverage, chemically similar to what our databases indicate human coffee contains. Maya filled a cup, took a sip, and made a face. Okay, similar is a strong word. This tastes like someone described coffee to a computer, and the computer made its best guess. But it's caffeinated, so I'll take it. They sat at one of the tables, their guards and officers maintaining a respectful distance. For a moment, they weren't a Toral commander and a human lieutenant. They were just two military personnel, tired from too many diplomatic meetings, sharing a bad cup of not-quite coffee. The Council's going to push for weapons inspections, Vash'kara said. They'll want to see your ships, your weapons systems, your research facilities. Hard pass, Maya said immediately. We're happy to establish mutual inspection protocols, but we're not opening up our entire military infrastructure for review. That's not partnership, that's occupation. They'll argue it's necessary for security. We'll argue that security works both ways, Maya countered. We'll agree to inspections when every other member species agrees to the same level of scrutiny. No special treatment, positive or negative. Vash'kara nodded slowly. That could work. It's bold, but it could work. The smaller species would support it. They've been asking for inspection protocols for years. See? Maya said, raising her cup in a mock toast. Common ground. We're practically friends now. Friends might be premature, Vash'kara said, but she found herself smiling despite the situation. Cordial professional acquaintances, perhaps. I'll take it, Maya replied. Better than mortal enemies who are definitely planning to murder each other. The bar for successful diplomacy is apparently very low, Vash'kara observed. Welcome to dealing with humans, Maya said cheerfully. We excel at setting low expectations, and then occasionally exceeding them through sheer stubbornness and spite. They talked for another hour, working through potential frameworks and agreements, finding areas of compromise that neither the Council nor Earth would love, but both could probably tolerate. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even particularly elegant. But it was workable, which in galactic politics was about as good as things ever got. I should get back to the delegation, Maya said eventually, standing and stretching again. They're probably wondering if you've imprisoned me or fed me to some kind of space creature. We don't keep space creatures, Vash'kara said. Liability issues. Shame, Maya replied. That would really complete the whole alien warship aesthetic you've got going. As Maya headed toward the door, she paused and looked back. Commander? Thanks for being straight with me. Most of the people we've talked to have been so busy being diplomatic, they forgot to be honest. It's refreshing. Thank you for not threatening to blow up my ship, Vash'kara replied. I appreciate the restraint. Maya laughed, a sound that the translator noted was associated with human amusement. Day's not over yet, Commander. Day's not over yet. And with that deeply unsettling statement, delivered with perfect comedic timing, Lieutenant Maya Torres left the mess hall, leaving Vash'kara to contemplate both the future of galactic diplomacy and the strong possibility that she'd just become friends with the most dangerous species in known space. This was definitely not in the manual. 3 days after that initial meeting, Vash'kara found herself standing in the central command hub of Station Meridian, the galaxy's most secure diplomatic facility, watching the largest gathering of military powers in recorded history prepare to either make peace with humanity or start the kind of war that would make the Draknor incident look like a minor disagreement over parking spaces. "This is a monumentally bad idea," muttered General Draknor, the Kolathi representative, his forearms crossed, in what Vash'kara had learned was the Kolathi equivalent of extreme skepticism. "We should be discussing containment strategies, not inviting them to demonstrate their capabilities." "They insisted," Vash'kara replied, keeping her tone neutral. Lieutenant Torres said, and I quote, "If you want to understand how we fight, watching us fight would probably be more useful than reading reports about us fighting." "She has a point," admitted Ambassador Sarah from the Venn Collective, though she looked about as comfortable as someone sitting on a plasma grenade. "We've spent months analyzing battle data. Perhaps seeing them in action would provide clarity." "Or terror," Draknor grumbled. "Likely terror." The demonstration was scheduled to take place in the Creighton Expanse, an empty region of space specifically maintained for weapons testing. The Council had provided 3 decommissioned warships as targets, obsolete vessels that had been scheduled for scrapping anyway. Maya had taken one look at the specifications and asked if they had anything more challenging. The Council had interpreted this as bravado. Vash'kara was beginning to suspect it was just honesty. The human ship emerged from FTL with none of the grace that characterized standard military vessels. It didn't smoothly transition into normal space like the Toral fleet. It didn't elegantly materialize like Venn ships. It basically punched through reality, announced its presence with what the sensors described as unnecessary energy discharge, and immediately began broadcasting music across all frequencies. "What is that noise?" demanded Draknor, his translator struggling with the rapid percussion and electronic sounds. "I believe it's called rock music," Vash'kara said, checking her cultural database. "Humans often listen to it during combat operations. Something about maintaining morale and, quote, getting pumped up." "Getting pumped up," Draknor repeated, his tone suggesting he'd just heard the most ridiculous thing in his 300-year lifespan. "They're treating this like recreation." The human vessel was designated the EDF Relentless, and it looked nothing like proper warships. Where Toral ships were sleek and angular, and Kolathi vessels were massive and imposing, the Relentless looked like someone had taken a cargo freighter, strapped entirely too many weapons to it, and then added more weapons for good measure. It shouldn't have been intimidating. It was absolutely terrifying. "Meridian Control, this is Relentless Actual." Maya's voice crackled over the comm system, barely audible over the music that was still blasting in the background. "We're ready to begin the demonstration whenever you give the word. Also, quick question. Are we restricted to conventional weapons, or can we use the fun stuff?" Vash'kara exchanged glances with the other council members. No one seemed willing to ask what qualified as fun stuff in human military terminology. "Relentless Actual. You are cleared to engage targets using whatever methods you deem appropriate," Vash'kara transmitted, deciding that the Council had asked for this demonstration and would therefore get exactly what they'd requested. "Rules of engagement are, at your discretion, suspended." There was a pause. Then Maya's voice came back, and Vash'kara could hear the smile in it. "Control, did you just tell us there are no rules?" "The Council wishes to observe human combat doctrine without restrictions," Vash'kara confirmed, and ignored the panicked gestures from several ambassadors who were apparently having second thoughts about the whole no restrictions thing. Outstanding, Maya replied. Relentless out. Time to go to work, people. The music cut off abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that somehow felt more menacing than the noise had been. The Relentless drifted toward the target vessels, its approach seemingly casual, almost lazy. Every sensor in the command hub was focused on the human ship, waiting to see what would happen. Nothing happened. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. The Relentless just floated there, making no aggressive moves, powering no weapons, doing absolutely nothing. "Is their ship malfunctioning?" asked Ambassador Sarah. Before anyone could answer, all 3 target vessels exploded simultaneously. Not fired upon, not hit by missiles. They just exploded, catastrophic detonations that reduced 3 capital-class warships to expanding clouds of debris in the span of 2 seconds. The command hub erupted in chaos. Alarms blared. Officers shouted conflicting reports. Sensors scrambled to understand what had just happened, and every analysis came back with variations of unknown. "How?" Draknor demanded, his voice cutting through the noise. "They didn't fire a single weapon. Our sensors detected no missile launches, no energy beams, nothing." Vash'kara was already reviewing the tactical data, her mind racing through possibilities. Then she saw it, buried in the sensor logs. A brief spike in local quantum field fluctuations, barely noticeable, occurring exactly 3 seconds before the explosions. "They hacked the ships," she said quietly. The room fell silent. "Impossible," Draknor stated flatly. Those vessels were completely isolated. No network connections, no wireless systems, nothing that could be remotely accessed. "Meridian control, relentless actual," Maya's voice interrupted, cheerful and entirely too pleased with herself. "Targets neutralized. We accessed the ship's maintenance logs, found out they all had the same model of power regulator, exploited a firmware vulnerability that's existed for like 70 years, and convinced their reactors to undergo rapid unscheduled disassembly. Took about 90 seconds to write the exploit. Would have been faster, but Davis wanted to add a countdown timer for dramatic effect. "You hacked ships that weren't connected to any network," Vash'kara said, not quite believing the words, even as she spoke them. "Oh, they were connected," Maya replied. "Everything's connected if you know where to look. Those ships had automated distress beacons, right? Beacons that monitor ship systems and report status? Those beacons have processors. Processors can be compromised. Once we owned the beacons, we owned everything they were connected to, which turned out to be basically the entire ship. Honestly, your cybersecurity is like 70 years behind your other technology. It's kind of embarrassing." Ambassador Sarah looked like she might faint. "You could do this to any ship in the galaxy?" "I mean, theoretically, yes," Maya said, and Vash'kara could practically hear the shrug. "But we wouldn't, because that would be rude, and also probably start several wars. This was just a demonstration of capability. You asked how we fight. We fight smart. We use every advantage, exploit every weakness, and generally make life really difficult for anyone who decides we're an acceptable target." "This is exactly what the Council feared," Draknor said, turning to face Vash'kara. "They have capabilities that make conventional defense meaningless. How do we protect against an enemy that can destroy our ships without firing a shot?" "You don't," Maya's voice cut in, apparently still listening to the command channel. "That's the point, General. You can't protect against us if we decide you're an enemy. But here's the thing you all keep missing. We don't want enemies. We want partners. Allies. Trading partners. people to share technology with and learn from, and maybe grab drinks with after work. The Draknor, Sarah said quietly. You destroyed them. Utterly. The Draknor attacked us, Maya replied, and the friendliness in her voice evaporated. They came to our home, threatened our families, and demanded submission. We gave them a chance to leave. Multiple chances. They chose violence. So we taught them a very permanent lesson about the consequences of that choice. And if we choose to see you as a threat? Draknor challenged. If the Council decides humanity is too dangerous to exist freely? The silence that followed was profound and deeply uncomfortable. Then you'd better hope you're more creative than the Draknor, Maya said finally. Because we've got 8 billion people, and every single one of them has opinions about how to solve problems. You think the tricks we used on the Draknor were impressive? That was us being polite. That was us using conventional tactics, adjusted for asymmetric warfare. You really don't want to see what we come up with when we get serious. Vash'kara made a decision. Relentless. Return to Meridian. We need to talk. Copy that, Control. Coming home. 20 minutes later, Maya stood in the same conference room where they'd first met, but the atmosphere was completely different. The council members were present via hologram, dozens of them, representing every major power in the galaxy. They looked scared. Maya looked bored. So, Maya said, breaking the uncomfortable silence, I'm guessing the demonstration raised some concerns. You destroyed 3 warships without firing a weapon, Sarah said. You hacked systems that were designed to be unhackable. You did it in 90 seconds. Lieutenant Torres, you must understand how this appears to the Council. Scary, Maya supplied helpfully. It appears scary. You're all thinking we're too dangerous, too unpredictable, too good at breaking things. You're wondering if maybe the galaxy would be safer if humanity was contained, restricted, or possibly eliminated before we become an even bigger problem. The holograms shifted uncomfortably. No one denied it. Here's what you're missing, Maya continued, leaning forward on the table. Every single capability we demonstrated today, we developed it in response to threats. The Draknor showed up with ships that could glass planets, so we learned to kill ships without needing bigger guns. We didn't do this because we're violent or aggressive. We did it because we were scared and desperate and determined to survive. That doesn't make it less dangerous, Draknor argued. No, Maya agreed. It makes it more dangerous, because it means we're not going to stop getting better at this. We're not going to plateau and decide we're good enough. We're going to keep developing, keep innovating, keep finding new ways to solve problems. And you have 2 choices about how to deal with that. She stood up, walking to the observation window. Choice 1. You treat us as a threat. You implement restrictions, sanctions, containment protocols. Maybe you even try military action, though I really recommend against that. And we respond by isolating ourselves, focusing all our creative energy on defense. And in 20 years, we're so far ahead of you technologically that this conversation seems quaint. Or choice 2, Vash'kara said, understanding where Maya was going. We integrate humanity into the galactic community as full partners. We share technology, coordinate defense, build something together that's stronger than any single species could create alone. Exactly, Maya said, turning back to face the holograms. Look, I get it. We're scary. We showed up out of nowhere, broke all your expectations about how military technology develops, and generally made everyone nervous. But fear-based decisions are how wars start. And trust me, you don't want a war with us. Not because we'd win, though we probably would, but because wars are stupid and wasteful and bad for everyone involved. What guarantees can you offer? Asked a hologram Vash'kara didn't recognize. A Yenix diplomat. How do we know humanity won't use these capabilities aggressively? Maya smiled, but it wasn't warm. You don't. Just like we don't know the Kolathi won't use their fleet to conquer their neighbors, or the Ven won't use their economic power to bankrupt systems they don't like, or the Toral won't decide to enforce their version of order on unwilling populations. Trust goes both ways, Ambassador. The Draknor, Brekthor said again, like he couldn't let it go. You annihilated them. We defended ourselves, Maya corrected. There's a difference, a big one. The Draknor initiated aggression. We ended it. If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. If you trade fairly with us, we'll trade fairly with you. If you threaten us, we'll make you regret it. This isn't complicated. One of the holograms, an elderly Toral female with more ceremonial decorations than Vash'kara had ever seen, spoke up. What does humanity want, Lieutenant Torres? Maya considered the question seriously. Honestly, we want to explore. We want to learn. We want to meet new people, see new places, figure out how this whole galaxy thing works. We want to contribute, to be part of something bigger than just Earth. We're curious, and curiosity is basically our defining trait. And if your curiosity is unwelcome, the elderly Toral pressed, then we'll find somewhere it is welcome, Maya replied. The galaxy's a big place, plenty of room for everyone, including species that make other people nervous. Vash'kara watched the holograms, seeing the calculations happening behind diplomatic masks. Fear versus pragmatism, security versus opportunity, known threats versus unknown possibilities. I propose a trial integration, Vash'kara said, surprising herself. Humanity joins the Galactic Council as provisional members. Full voting rights on matters affecting them. Observer status on other issues. We establish mutual defense agreements, technology sharing protocols, and inspection frameworks that apply equally to all members. One standard year trial period, after which we assess and decide on permanent membership. You would vouch for them? Sarah asked. I would, Vash'kara confirmed, knowing this would probably cost her the promotion she'd been working toward for 15 years. Humanity is dangerous, but so is everyone else with sufficient power. The question isn't whether they're dangerous. The question is whether they're trustworthy. And based on my interactions with Lieutenant Torres, I believe they are. Maya looked at Vash'kara with something that might have been respect. Thanks, Commander. That's probably going to get you in trouble. Almost certainly, Vash'kara agreed, but someone needs to be the first to trust, or we'll all just keep circling each other suspiciously until something breaks. The council deliberated for hours. Vash'kara and Maya waited in the conference room, occasionally making small talk, mostly just sitting in companionable silence. At some point, Davis brought actual Earth coffee, which Vash'kara tried and immediately regretted. It tasted like someone had distilled aggression into liquid form. How do you drink this? She asked, coughing. Acquired taste, Maya said cheerfully. Helps if you're sleep-deprived and need to stay functional. Also, it's tradition. Humans have been drinking terrible coffee in military contexts for like 500 years. It builds character. It builds heartburn, Vash'kara muttered, but she took another sip anyway. Finally, the council reconvened. The elderly Toral female spoke, her voice carrying the weight of consensus. Humanity will be granted provisional council membership under the terms Commander Vash'kara proposed. We expect full transparency, good faith cooperation, and adherence to all agreed protocols. We can do that, Maya said. Thank you. You won't regret this. We'd better not, Draknor grumbled, because if we do, the entire galaxy will hold the Toral responsible for vouching for you. No pressure, Commander, Maya said to Vash'kara with a grin. None whatsoever, Vash'kara replied dryly. The formal ceremonies took another week. Treaties were signed, protocols were established, humanity officially joined the galactic community, and the galaxy collectively held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. 6 months later, Vash'kara stood on the observation deck of the Relentless, watching as human and Toral engineers worked together on a joint research project. They were laughing about something, sharing data freely, building something neither species could have created alone. Told you it would work out, Maya said, joining her at the window. There have been incidents, Vash'kara pointed out. The trade dispute with the Phoenix Consortium, the territorial disagreement with the Outer Rim colonies, that thing with the Yenix ambassador, and the diplomatic dinner. How were we supposed to know their food was sacred? Maya protested. It was sitting on a table labeled refreshments. That's universal code for please eat this. It was a religious ceremony, Vash'kara said. The food was an offering to their deities. Well, their deities should have put up a sign, Maya muttered. Anyway, those were minor hiccups. Overall, integration's going pretty well. She wasn't wrong. Despite the rough patches, humanity had proven to be valuable council members. They'd shared advanced cybersecurity protocols that had already prevented 2 major hacking attempts. They'd contributed creative solutions to long-standing engineering problems. They'd even helped mediate a dispute between the Kolathi and the Ven, approaching the situation with fresh perspectives that both sides found acceptable. They were also, Vash'kara had learned, enthusiastic about social bonding. Humans threw parties for everything. Successful missions, unsuccessful missions, Tuesdays. They'd introduced the concept of game night to the galaxy, which had been a bewildering experience for everyone involved, but was becoming oddly popular. Your people are exhausting, Vash'kara said, but there was fondness in her voice. We contain multitudes, Maya replied. Also coffee and spite. Mostly those 2 things, actually. I've been promoted, Vash'kara said. Director of Interspecies Military Coordination. Apparently, successfully integrating humanity into the Council is considered a significant achievement. Congratulations, Maya said. That's fantastic. Well deserved. You've been promoted too, Vash'kara added. Earth Defense Coalition wants you to lead their new diplomatic corps. Ambassador Torres has a nice ring to it. Maya grimaced. That sounds like a lot of meetings and not enough exploding things. But yeah, I accepted. Someone's got to make sure we don't accidentally start any wars through cultural misunderstandings. Might as well be me. They watched the stars in comfortable silence. 2 military officers from different worlds who'd become unlikely friends through a combination of honesty, mutual respect, and shared exhaustion from dealing with bureaucracy. Think it'll last? Maya asked. The peace, the integration, all of it. Vash'kara considered. Honestly, probably not forever. Someone will do something stupid eventually. There'll be conflicts, disagreements, maybe even small wars. But I think the foundation we've built is strong enough to survive those challenges. And having humanity involved makes it stronger, not weaker. Even though we're dangerous and unpredictable and generally make everyone nervous? Especially because of that, Vash'kara said, the galaxy was getting stagnant. Everyone following the same patterns, thinking the same thoughts, doing things the way they'd always been done. You're chaos, but you're useful chaos. You make us think differently. Question assumptions. Try new approaches. So we're like the galaxy's weird friend who shows up with strange ideas and everyone's not sure if they're brilliant or insane? Essentially, yes, Maya laughed. I can live with that. Weird friend to the galaxy. Put it on my business cards. Below them, a human engineer explained something to a Toral colleague using wild hand gestures and what appeared to be a hastily drawn diagram on a digital tablet. The Toral looked confused, then understanding, then excited. They both rushed off toward the engineering bay, clearly having just solved whatever problem they'd been working on. That's good to see, Maya said softly. People working together, building things instead of breaking them. Don't get sentimental on me, Ambassador, Vash'kara teased. Never, Maya replied, just taking a moment to appreciate that we didn't blow up the galaxy or get humanity banned from space. Small victories. Small victories, Vash'kara agreed. 6 months after that, when the Krell invasion hit the outer territories with a force that terrified the entire Council, it was humanity and the Toral working together who developed the defense strategy that saved billions of lives. They combined Toral tactical doctrine with human improvisation, traditional warfare with unconventional thinking, and created something entirely new. The Krell never knew what hit them. Neither did anyone else, really. But it worked. And that was what mattered. The galaxy learned an important lesson. Humanity wasn't a problem to be managed or a threat to be contained. They were partners, allies, friends. Dangerous? Yes. Unpredictable? Absolutely. But ultimately, they were exactly what the galaxy needed, even if it hadn't known it. And Vash'kara, standing beside Maya on the bridge of a joint task force vessel, watching as human and Toral and Ven and Kolathi and dozens of other species worked together to protect their shared home, thought that maybe, just maybe, this whole galactic community thing might actually work out after all. Hey, Commander, Maya said, breaking her contemplation. When this is over, want to grab that terrible synthocaf and complain about paperwork? Vash'kara smiled. I'd like that, Ambassador. I'd like that very much. The stars shone bright and endless before them, full of possibilities and challenges and adventures yet to come. And somewhere out there, humanity was already thinking about what came next, planning their next move, dreaming their next impossible dream. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, everyone eventually agreed, was probably a good thing.